Right, good evening, councillors. I'll just do a bit of housekeeping to start with. There is no fire alarm scheduled tonight, and if the alarm sounds, please evacuate the building. The fire exits are located at the side of the rooms. Exit through the reception and meet in the War Memorial Park. This is being webcast. It'll be live, and so all behave yourself as always. And please switch your mobile phones off. Right, we have apologies.
So I've received apologies from Councillor Bowes and Councillor Harvey, and Councillor Bowes is replaced by Councillor McKay, and Councillor Harvey is replaced by Councillor Lloyd James.
Thank you. Declaration of interest. Have we got any declaration of interest? No. Urgent matters. I don't believe we have. Is it? No. Item 4. Minutes of the last two meetings, actually, which is the 14th of February. Are we agreed with that one? And what's the date of the?
24th of January.
And the 24th of January for the call-in. Are we in agreement with these minutes? Yes? Thank you. I will sign them then. Right, draft customer experience strategy, which will be Katie. It's going to open up for us. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. For those of you I haven't met before, my name's Katie Salis and I'm the Head of Customer Service Improvement and Performance. In today's world, our customers interact with the council in many ways, and a good and well-informed customer experience across these access channels translates into a seamless experience with the council. When drafting this customer experience strategy, I wanted to provide an approach which ensures we consider and review the various ways customers interact with the council for the numerous services we provide. An approach which recognises that customer expectations are influenced by the various service providers they interact with, who have redefined and elevated their offers, and that these expectations remain when interacting with the council. That even though there is a reliance on council services, and in many cases no choice other than to deal with the council, that it is our duty to embrace an approach which improves the customer experience across all types of customer interactions with the council, whether that be via phone, a digital access channel or in person. This strategy recognises that for many people, an improved experience will mean a website with more digital options, clear navigation and the right content delivered at the right time. But it equally recognises that digital self-service is not right for every customer or indeed every scenario, and that whilst we will always support those who wish to use digital channels and need help to do so, that we will be there when customers need to speak with us or see us face to face. This strategy also seeks to ensure our reputation is for delivering quality services which are simple to use and understand, and that we provide clear management of expectations and, where possible, proactive service status updates through to resolution. These updates will be achieved through close alignment with the digital strategy, which will deliver, amongst other initiatives, a new customer relationship management system to enable the proactive service updates. Thank you for your time, and I welcome any comments you have.
Councillor Bean, the Cabinet Holder, would like to say a few words, and then I will open it up for questions.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. I guess initially just thank you to Katie, obviously for the effort that's been putting in bringing this paper forward. Katie's covered most of the points, but I guess just to reinforce that, you know, when it comes to service delivery, generally, residents, customers have a choice, but with a council, you know, they have no choice. We are the service provider, and it's really important that we do deliver a best-in-class service, and that's where we should be kind of aiming for. I think it's really important to reinforce the message around digitisation. We're not saying that digital is for everybody, but I think we need to recognise that the world is moving in that direction, and customer expectation in that space has certainly moved on significantly. But equally, it's super important that if that is not the right contact channel of choice for you, that ultimately we are here at the end of the phone, as we always have been. So I guess just to reinforce that this isn't a paper that's seeking to say that we will no longer be here taking phone calls, absolutely not. But I think we just need to recognise that times have changed and things have moved on. And I guess just looking forward to hearing your feedback on the paper this evening as well.
Have we any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just having a quick, did read through it before and sort of just looking at it, and something that is jumping out at me is there isn't really any talk about a sort of visual imagery to use for communication with people. We do have an increasingly diverse population. We also have people who potentially have cognitive disability, and I'm pleased to see, I think we'd talk about, I'm not sure if it's in this one or the next one, about the deaf, for people with hearing problems, that sort of support, that's great. But obviously, I know that looking at the current website at the moment is incredible. There is the nice visuals at the front, but it's incredibly hard to find any data, and I know that's already recognised. But obviously from a customer service perspective, so if somebody goes onto the website, it's always about don't make me think when it comes to web design, and it's just, you know, keeping it simple, and if I'm not able to think things through clearly, or I'm in a panic situation, that should make it really simple. So it'd be really nice to see that reflected in here to show that there will be, because it does talk about accessibility, it just talks about ongoing, doesn't say if there's a standard you're looking to adopt, anything like that. So things that actually quantify and qualify those levels that you're looking to work to would be brilliant. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Mine was, I just wanted to ask some questions around, it was on the Customer Experience Action Plan, and it's about complaints. So you say in there that you're going to spread the learning. What does that mean?
So to monitor the...
Sorry.
So to monitor the trends in complaints, analyse those and share that learning more widely, rather than with the management in that part of the structure, to share it across the council and see where we can make further ongoing improvements.
And can I also, in relation to that, are there KPIs in relation to that area or this area of work?
So the KPI we have is that we will respond to complaints within 10 working days of receipt. We send out auto acknowledgements within 24 working hours of receipt. And if we can't do that, we provide a holding response and explain why we can't do it in the 10 days and give you an estimate of when we can. And that is something that's closely monitored for adherence.
The other one was about English not being your first language. What do you actually offer for people? Because it says there that it's their offer of written information. I just wondered what it looks like and where it is on.
On our website, it will translate. It's called Translate It, Translate IT, so you can translate our website. We also have a provider who will provide either written documents that have been translated, or provide a translator if it's an in-person meeting that we need to have. We also have a couple of our reception staff speak other languages. So we have a Polish speaker and other languages that that's if they're on reception that day, but we do have that skill set within our team for some of those common languages, but we also have the provider who we can call on so that the customer can engage in the way that they need to through their language.
Councillor Tutt.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the paper. It's good to see that we've got customers or residents at the heart of everything we're doing. Could you outline for me a bit more on, you mentioned on page 19 that we'll develop effective customer engagement forums. Could you sort of outline what you're thinking there, please?
Yes, one of the areas I think we need to improve is to seek resident input as our customer and to hold in-person or online forums with them. So to talk about a given customer journey on a service, their experience of engaging with the council in accessing service. We don't do that at the moment, and it's something we need to do more as we move forward, because we can't assume we know what's important to the customer. We might think we've built a journey that is really good. It may not actually hit the important points for them. So it's to get that real life quantitative feedback from our actual residents who use the services that we provide, rather than merely doing what other councils do and solely relying on the volume data that we hold. So we know how many people contact us for X, Y and Z, but it's around the why. How was that for you? In the paper as well, I make reference to, you might have a very good conversation with somebody in the contact centre and you're pleased with that interaction, but the fact you had to phone to find that out because you couldn't get it on our website, that's something where we can improve the journey, and it's getting that kind of real feedback from people on their experience.
Thank you, that's very helpful and good to know. Will we also use those forums in a proactive way? So when we're looking at a new way of doing something, we might use that as basically a beta testing scenario?
With the new website that we are designing at the moment, we're going to be offering we will ask volunteers to carry out a process to see how they are doing it. Again, we live and breathe it every day. We get used to it and we think, oh, that's obvious, but it may not be. And I think that will prove to be valuable there. So that's the first one of these things that we will do, will be around that new website design and journeys, and then for other access channels as well.
Councillor Compton-Burnett.
Thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation, and it looks great. And as Kate was saying, it's great to see everybody, the customer at the heart of it. I'm wondering whether we could have a bit more standardisation of the responses, because if somebody phones or they send a letter or they send an email or they complain, at the end of the day, it always arrives on the same person's desk, no matter what format it's in. And I'm wondering whether we could use the process that you've already outlined, which I think is brilliant, of having an immediate acknowledgement, and then within, I think, rather than 24 working hours, does that mean 1 working day or 2 working days? One or the other, but working days are easier, I think, than working hours. So you have your acknowledgement, and then your initial response. So if it's very straightforward, answer it. But otherwise the sort of holding response, and then a more detailed one later. I think if we can do the same for everyone with the same timings, that would probably work really well.
Yes, thank you. Yes, one of the things I noted earlier is, do we do those acknowledgements for letters? I know we do it for complaints, but in a letter when you get it, do our email addresses that we publish like that have the auto acknowledgements on them? So that's an action I have noted to do that. So it's that we want the customers to experience us as a council rather than the separate entities, and it being very different depending on where you happen to land with your query.
Sorry, and I think just to add, another one of the action points in here talks about mapping the main customer journeys, and I think that gives you a really good opportunity, to your point, to look at, is there the ability here to try and standardise SLAs across services? And it might not be that that's possible in every single scenario, but as far as possible in terms of being very principle based, we should be looking to standardise those SLAs, whether it's a bin issue or a grounds maintenance issue, as far as possible, that as a customer you get a response within a set period of time, and that's consistent, whatever that service touch point is. But I think the customer mapping, or the mapping of those customer journeys, is a really good opportunity to look at that standardisation as well.
Councillor Maloney.
Okay, thank you very much. My question is about, councillors itself contacting via the contact email addresses. We send emails there, and often, we get the response if the officer requires some more information. We don't get any response if that issue has been resolved. And there is no one dashboard where we can go and check ourselves. So that kind of self-service will be useful where we can get it. And I work for a corporate company, and my suggestion is, when I raise a ticket, that a ticket will be issued, and I can track the ticket, who is with the ticket. At the end of the ticket, by the way, I'm closing this ticket, and give me the feedback of this ticket. So that completes the 360 degrees. Right now, ever since I became councillor, and nearly two years, I can see the emails, around 88 emails from the contact. So probably around 30 or 35 issues that I raised, but the rest of them are, one of them is an automatic response saying that, yeah, thank you for contacting, and the next one is just asking for some more information. And some of the issues that I raise it, and all of a sudden I see a different outcome than what I normally anticipate. So is there any way that we can improve that process?
Yes, thank you for that. I believe you're right. There is probably a technical element on this one as creating those kind of dashboards and views on that. However, what is then underneath the technical solution is probably the question that we want to look into and then try to find an answer.
Sorry, Sue, I don't know whether you're going to say the same thing or carry on, but I guess, Aaron, the point you make is super valid, because as counsellors, technically, you are a customer of the service that's being provided by the contact centre. I guess the purpose of this paper has predominantly been looking at our residents and the service level when they interact with us. But I think the point that you make is super valid, and it's really important as well. And I think even in terms of ensuring from a touch point of view that all contact comes in from counsellors via the contact centre as well. But I think the point you make is really valid. It's not been picked up in this paper, but I think it's something that we do need to think about, because it is really important that as counsellors you are still a recipient of that service that the contact centre is providing.
So I think it's worth noting in terms of when we're thinking about residents and their contact, obviously part of the new CRM system is about that 360-degree feedback and notification in terms of what's happening. I think what we need to understand is where the contact is coming from members and how we might be able to utilise that in a similar fashion to provide updates. So it's certainly something that's being looked at as part of our solution. So we'll see how that can fit members' requirements as well.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my question actually leads into what we've just been talking about, because Section 2.5 talks about the delivery of the new customer relationship management system. I just wonder if there is a timescale for that. I was going to make exactly the suggestion that Sue's just made, that there's a parallel in the way the system would operate regardless of who is coming in with a query, and being able to look online and see the status of how it's being managed would be really appreciated.
So we're anticipating that the first phase of the new customer relationship management system will go live in September, and that will be for waste and recycling services. And then the subsequent phase to that will be for the parks and street scenes services, and then the residual services on the CRM. Both of those services, we want to develop the capability to provide the proactive status update, which we've just discussed. I think the thing that Yussi and I will need to think about is the entity on that system, whether it's the counsellor or the customer, because at the minute it's just one. So whether there is something we can do there so that you also get notification, or is everything going through the counsellor rather than that resident? So it's thinking that through, but technically the person that's logged it, the name we have there, if we have that email address, will be the one that will get those proactive updates for those services.
Councillor Durant.
Hang on. There we are. It's probably a bit of an outdated term now, but the expression warm handovers I always found quite useful in these sort of relationships, because what is frustrating for people is when they ring, they're asked what the problem is, who they want to talk to, who they are, they're handed on to the next person, and you have to go through it all again. That's frustrating because you've been through the numerical selection process, then you come to a human being and you think, I'm there, and off it goes again. So I'd like to understand what we're doing to kind of push that as a process, because it's a much more fulfilling experience and you get a much greater sense you might get your thing dealt with fairly quickly. So that's one question. The other question is to do with, and I'm not honestly not up to date with all the terms, but one of the things I find very frustrating are these sort of robotic chat boxes. Do you want to have a chat with a robot? No. And predetermined questions and answers. Go to here and it will help you. And the question never quite covers what you want to ask. And the answer certainly doesn't give you what you want. Are we going to resist using those things or what, sort of, as we go forward? Because they enrich the customer. When we're on a lot of journeys in here, I'm going to get a season ticket, but it will enrich that journey if we sort those things out. So,
thank you. Yes, they always say on the phone as well, the worst thing you can say is, have you read our website? Because very often they've tried that, they want to phone because they want to talk to somebody. Yes, the principle of the warm handover is something the contact centre do with calls out to officers if they're unable to handle the query. So the contact centre to a deep level handle waste and recycling, parks and street scenes. It's unlikely you'd need to speak to anybody else. But if they're passing the call over to another officer, they will wait on the line. And do that warm transfer. That is a principle we operate to. It's something I can pick up with the officers in the services if your lived experience is that, or your residence is that doesn't happen in reality, that you wouldn't know that warm handover had occurred. So I will pick that up.
You shouldn't have to give you a warm handover.
Oh, no.
It should just be there. So I know you weren't saying that.
Yeah.
Sorry. But.
You only want to say it once,
Yeah.
and yes. And then moving to the chatbots, it's interesting. We have trialled a chatbot on our website, and it hasn't delivered what we anticipated, so it isn't something we're going to persist with. I think customers have found it confusing. Are they using the search box or are they using the bot? And as you say, bots are more successful when they're narrow and deep. This can be about anything that the council may be doing, so it's not as successful in my view. So it's something we will keep an eye on the technology in the market, but absolutely recognise that at the moment that's not adding any value to us. The focus will be on the website.
Councillor Tustone.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, that was interesting because I was looking there and thinking about the chatbots. And obviously that's something that you can potentially look at as you gather your data, because it's the data that's what feeds into the chatbot and makes them effective or not. But one thing I was thinking about is under normal, if you were just ringing a garage, you wouldn't normally have any situations that potentially would elicit an emergency service or a crisis. But obviously we deal with things like housing, domestic abuse potentially. What would happen in that situation if it was out of hours and somebody went on? Are you looking at making sure those sort of journeys are also being covered?
Yes, our out of hours responses will be covered, but I can confirm if you phone 844 844 currently and it is around a homelessness or a vulnerable situation, then the service provider is in touch with our housing team and a duty officer will pick that up. So that is the case now. And one of the things we are also going to do on the website review is make it clear if that's something we do out of hours or not, because that's not always clear in every case. We don't do it for every services, but absolutely for those critical ones we do.
And obviously the other emergency services, if that would be relevant, are they trained to pass on something like that?
Yes, we have one where if there is something where it's a business continuity issue or something which is a matter for 101 or 999, they are trained to say, that's not the council, you need to call this number.
Councillor James.
Thank you. I just want to pick up on what Aaron was saying about in relation to the councillor's experience. So we're told to actually, all of us, to use the contact centre to report issues. And my experience has been that you then pass it on to whoever. So I suppose you could use the same language in relation to spreading the load in relation to the complaints. But my experience is that then it falls down at that point. So I suppose, to be honest, now I've stopped tending to use the contact centre, which is not good because we're all told that that's the route that we're meant to go. Yes. So I do think as a customer experience, and I know we're maybe a different customer, but it doesn't work. So so if something comes into you, who owns that, and at what point does it then become the property of someone else to then, we need to have some very clear guidelines on. So if you then pass it over to street care, is it then an officer's responsibility there, or do you have to see the outcome through? That's one of my questions.
Currently, if I can use the term, it is a one-way. If we can handle it and respond to it for you, we will. So if it's reporting, for example, fly tipping, and we can log that as a report for the street care operative to go out and clear that. If there's a problem with that fly tip or you've got other questions, that's the sort of thing we would need to log for you, but pass it on to that service area. At the moment, we don't have a closed loop feedback, so unless you were to come back to us, we're not aware whether that has been resolved or not, because the request has gone out. That is something that the new CRM will give us that greater visibility on. And also the adherence to the service levels, as Councillor Bean was saying, it's that visibility there. So I think that is something that will improve. And also the response times are there in the charter once things are handed off to other or back office areas, to use that term.
The other question was around, on the customer charter, you say, when you contact us, we will, and you say offer a variety of ways to access our services, including a quicker and easier online. And then you say, lower down, you say, to help us, we would like you to access services online as much as possible. Do we need to have that as what we would like you to do? Because I just think the emphasis then is, that a move away from people that want to be able to. I don't know that I'd want that should be in there. I think, what we're saying, what we want above and what we're going to do, but I think it then almost overrides that by what we're asking the customer to do. Is it necessary to have that in there?
No, it isn't necessary. It is. It does help us, but what we're not doing is saying that you have to do that. So I think if it gives that sort of overrides it, as you say, I'll note that down, that was a comment of the scrutiny.
Councillor Tutt.
Thank you. I'd certainly like to commend the out of hours service. I had cause to phone in a couple of months ago in the snow spell about a homeless person, and I have to say they were extremely helpful, a very sensible response, and used good judgment. So I would like to say a big thank you to whoever was on call that weekend. The other one I wanted to ask you about was you've got on your website improvements, improved online forms. And I just want to check, because obviously that's coming up in June. As a resident, please can you put the tree form in so that you can fill that in online? At the moment, that's like an instrument of torture, trying to click in and get the form to work in a way that it really doesn't want to at the moment. That would really save the poor lady having to post forms to you and do the rest. Thank you.
So Duran, that's my last one of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, one more question. This is more that I've experienced as a councillor customer. most of the time I send an email. I get back a reply, not in the office. And that's not a criticism, people are doing all sorts of things. But it also, some will say, contact so-and-so else. Is there some sort of way we can automate that so I don't have to go and send another email to somebody else? It can just be transferred to their deputy, substitute, whatever it is, so that I don't have to then spend time. I've got to write another email to Joe or Fred.
It's certainly something we can have a look at, but I think the difficulty is that for some people they only want to talk to that individual, and therefore if it's private and confidential wouldn't want it to then be automatically passed on. So it's a judgment for the person that's actually trying to contact them if they would like to contact somebody else. So whilst I appreciate probably 9 times out of 10 you may well want to go on to contact that other person, it still needs to be a function of your choice in terms of contacting that other person, in case we are then passing on information that actually may be personal to you or personal to, and quite often we can't turn it on for members and off for everybody else. It would just be a generic thing. Whilst I understand what you're saying, I think that would be very difficult for us to do from a GDPR point of view.
No, I accept that. Occasionally I do a bit of wishful thinking. So, no, thank you very much for that response. Cheers.
I've just on the, I think you touched on it earlier, the question I asked earlier before we started the meeting, when we was talking about the written word rather than the email timing. That was picked up earlier, was that? Yeah. So, have we got any recommendations to go forward? Because most people are saying it's a good thing, let's look at it, and I think what's coming out for me as chair is what is happening is actually quite good, and the way forward seems to be a positive way. I haven't really picked up on any recommendations as such. Do
you want me to reflect what I've taken down as a, see whether everybody's happy? We've noted the recommendation that the standards be adopted across all channel access points in terms of, so this is your point as well, in terms of if you contact us by email, if you contact us by letter, however you contact us, that you get the same initial response timetable, you get the same initial letter fed back, and you get the same initial response times. A request in terms of the sort of visual communications on our websites to make sure that for those that may be less able, that it's actually easier for them to find information. We've noted the request to make sure that the warm handovers are happening. Rather than referring to 24 working hours, we will put that either in a working day or 2 working days. I think that was it, and I think we've got that one. Further information to be checked in terms of when councillors contact the contact centre and how that's being moved forward. Probably a change of wording around the complaints, rather than saying spread learning, perhaps share the learning, and just being a bit more clarity in terms of what we mean by that particular point. To reflect on the use of the terminology around it's easier for us if you use online services. For the tree form, can that be added online? So on that point, did you say remove it or just? I think we'll just reflect on it with the portfolio and cabinet in terms of it's not. I think it's terminology. We're not trying to say you must use digital first, but actually, if people want to be able to use it, obviously that makes it. I think it's fair to reflect that it's a choice. Yeah. But you may find it easier if you do the online, because it's a gentle push, if you like, rather than saying you must use digital. So I think we just need to reflect with the portfolio holder on that particular point, but obviously noting it as a recommendation. Did you have anything else, Katie?
Thank you very much. You can go if you wish, or you can stay and enjoy yourself. And thank the portfolio holder for coming, because it's nice to see him there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. My name is Jussi Vuolanne. I'm the head of the IT and digital transformation here at the council. What I'm bringing you today is a 3-year strategy which is intended to act as a bridge to help us to move onwards on our digital journey. It does form the foundations for the customer experience strategy, helps us to build the capabilities needed. It also builds on the awareness and acknowledgement of the wider change which is at the moment happening across the society. And it helps us to map up our approach to the digital in appropriate and proportionate context. Over the past 5 years, the pace of the digital transformation has been accelerating for a variety of reasons, some of them which have been referred into actual report, whether it's the cost of a technology, whether it's availability of technology, but there's a clear change. COVID-19 was a huge catalyst for this. Many local authorities did say during the pandemic that COVID did actually push their digitalization forward so that they achieved more in 4 weeks than in 3 years, because they had to do it, there was no option. This did also help the organizations, such as Basingstoke as well, to put the technical foundations in place for those forward journeys that when we come back, and as we have come back from the pandemic, that now we need to think what we're going to do in the future. Strategy recognizes, as discussed earlier today, that digital is a complementary channel for our customers. Whilst we recognize that there is this wider digital movement happening, that is not what we want to achieve, and we can't do that digital will become the sole access method for our services. We have a duty of care and obligation to ensure that our services are accessible and available for all of our residents, and we avoid increasing the digital exclusion or making digital a barrier or a scary thing to access those services. The strategy does acknowledge also the fact that businesses are becoming increasingly digital by default. E-commerce, online businesses used to be a privilege for the few businesses operating at scale. Now it's become a commodity. We are seeing micro businesses, home bakers, goods sellers, they operate from digital platforms by default. That then leaves us as a council a question that can we use digital in a wider context to help us to shape the borough so it becomes more lucrative, and we can kind of build on the future businesses here in Basingstoke. And it also kind of recognizes the work that we've done in the space of a more enterprise-driven world, where we have done some work with the fiber spine deployments and 5G living lab, which are essential elements when we try to build the opportunities for businesses to set themselves up in the borough. However, digital is also one of the tools which can and should be used to help us to combat our climate actions, whether it's about being able to use the data to inform us, or just simply to educate and raise the awareness within and outside of the organisation. As an organisation, where we are now is that we are in a relatively good position to continue our journey. Council has already invested in digital and online services, and we have a solid foundation to build on. We have also had some advice and guidance from third parties, which has helped us to shape our ongoing digital transformation program. But regardless of that, we do acknowledge that there is a need, as again discussed today, that we need to continue to modernize some of our existing systems, such as the website and CRM. And also we need to develop and implement new capabilities in areas which may not have that amount of digital readiness in place, such as the operations, better utilization of GIS in there, making them more mobile, more efficient, and to increase the communication between the teams. We also do acknowledge that whilst we have these digital services in place, there is a need to do more work to promote this end-to-end digitalization either. The services may seem digital for the customer, but there is still an element of manual processing behind the scenes. There is an area of improvement in there. From culture perspective and organization's perspective, Council has already done substantial investment into modern workplace, including technology, which again helps us to move forward. Where we want to be by 2027 is that in order to achieve our ambitions and goals, 80% of transformation is about people and only 20% is about technology. It's a collaborative and organic process which begins and ends on how we think about our customers and how we engage with our customers and colleagues. Technology and IT are just practical tools, but without this kind of a buy-in and a feeling that people feel that we provide appropriate services that they fell in love with, there is a risk of failure of the implementation of this strategy. Therefore, the delivery of this change needs to start from the people using very customer-centric and collaborative approach, supporting and enabling the innovation, helping us to create those platforms, which then need again an effective governance around them to ensure that we do the right thing, we monitor the right KPIs, and we are able to improve our services based on that. We want our digital services to become natural access channel of choice, while supporting and underpinning that human interaction and issue resolution. We see digital being embedded into our organization over time, and people feeling it's a positive element in their day-to-day service delivery and supporting the way how they operate and engage internally and with the customers. We want to ensure internally that our colleagues have the right tools. Right does not always necessarily mean the best in the market, so we want to ensure that we are smart in our procurement decisions. We offer them what works for us, which gives us the continuity and allows us to future-proof our operations. We want our colleagues to feel also that they are very engaged in the design and development selection process of these tools. As a leading principle, we want to focus on the areas in our operation where we can make the widest and most visible and tangible impact also to our customers. And primarily this refers to the operations where we can make a positive impact on climate through the removal of the print and reducing the mileage that we are using to commute between the jobs. One of the cornerstones for the transformation will be the increased and improved access to utilization of data. We want to explore, and we will explore the opportunity to build new capabilities such as the corporate business intelligence and dashboards, which can help us to identify and better understand our performance and dependencies and also opportunities between the services. Specific area of that work will be around the quality and integrity of the data and ability to bring various data sets together so that we can create a holistic view as a council to understand the stories that the data tells us. In short, the strategy aims to be a realistic, achievable roadmap, focusing on the improvement of our digital services. This is more about the evolution than the revolution in many ways. Digital is a key enabler to help us becoming better as an organization, but it's not the reason for our existence. And there is, at the end of the report, there is an action plan which informs you and the high-level actions and timeline for the implementation of those. Thank you very much.
I'm opening it up to questions.
Of course, thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, following on really, I think from the customer service stuff we've just been talking about, one of the thoughts on this, to me, very much on the digital area, is around tools for counsellors. I mean, personally, if you go through my Google photo feed, you'll see more photos of broken walls, weeds and bits of litter than you will of my children and my new baby granddaughters. And then what you do is you walk around, you'll take pictures, you'll go back, you're then trying to look at photo information to remind yourself where it was, and you're going in and trying to do it. So I do believe they utilised iPads in the past, but obviously having a system that you can actually walk about, so to connect, even if it is on something, and I'm getting into the detail of a solution, but as is always the way with these things, isn't it, we're giving you as an idea, it's that idea of being able to make that easy as well, because that will alleviate a lot of pain, I think, for officers as well, if that was there. And and leading on from that, the next question is around connecting with partners. We talked prior to this, didn't we, about how Vivid and Place people like the housing associations use like the GIS as well with their own data sets, and how we can work with them collaboratively to make sure that we're picking up, because quite often, I'm sure others have the same experience where they say, no, it's not ours, and then we say, yes, it is yours, and things like that. And then other things about around data, such as things like LG Inform, the platform that works, the LGA's data platform, that gives an awful lot of very interesting information, that gives us comparative tools, which is something we use. And then obviously connecting with things like, as in Hampshire utilise things like One Network for roadworks, streetworks, and how we can get that all that collaboration together will be fantastic. That's my wish list.
Thank you very much, and I do wholeheartedly again an awful lot of this will be around the GIS, which we did indeed touch previously today. And there is an element on this that especially this reported capability, whether it's from customer perspective, colleague or council perspective, is really essential for us. And I believe Katie and myself have been talking about this, and it's going to be a combined effort between this website refreshment and renewal and then the corresponding backend capabilities to provide increased visibility and ability to provide pictorial evidence and supporting documents in general.
Just picking up the point around information provided by perhaps other partners, for example, and sharing of information. Clearly, we have to do all of that within data sharing agreements and what we are actually allowed to share. I think one of the solutions that we're looking at in terms of sort of business intelligence is how we actually pull together some of these various information. So that may not necessarily be within our platform capabilities. It may be add-ons that we have in terms of how we pull that information together, and it's certainly something we will explore. In terms of tools for councils, I think that's something we need to take away and have a think about, because obviously that's not necessarily part of the organisational services digital strategy, but obviously that's a specific request in terms of what councillors may need to undertake their normal duties. So we'll certainly take that away and give it some consideration.
Councillor Mackay.
My understanding is that some teams within the council are struggling possibly with backlog because of the current performance of the GIS system. So it's good that it's in the action plan, but I wondered if what are we doing to expedite the provision for the new platform? Ongoing as a target in the action plan feels a bit flabby. I'd like to see something a bit more specific. And I'd like to think that once the upgrade is made, that there's a training plan for councillors, because I'm sure I'm not the only councillor that finds GIS a very useful tool when it does have the information that you need for the little discussions around who owns what, is responsible for it. Thank you.
Thank you. We are working through the set of improvements around the GIS already as of now. So going back to previous comments about the data sets as an example, we are improving the quality of it. And it is true that we have had some challenges, and we also been struggling with the resourcing, but we are now having a dedicated full-time resources allocated on, plus we are recruiting more. So GIS has been recognized as one of the critical enablers for the digital transformation, but also as a crucial operational platform which needs to be maintained and managed so that it's always up to date.
Councillor Tuck.
Thank you. Well, I'm reassured to have anyone from who puts together an IT strategy which is talking about technology being an enabler and not a reason for existence. So thank you for that. I think we all love the GIS layers. I mean, it is one of the most useful items that we have as councillors, as well as being one of the most accessible for us to get our teeth into. A detailed point, but I'm wondering, and this may not be the right answer, but is there a way that we can have like our own layer that we could, because I want to go around Lichpit with the residents saying, right, we'd like to ask the biodiversity team to make this wildflower patch or long grass patch or whatever. How do we do that other than asking Civic Print to print off some large maps, please? Generally across the whole of your document, resident input on usability, because in the end, I think we would, on the customer service thing, it's a kind of, if it's not easy to use and making my life better, my residents' life better and easier, it's just not going to be adopted or used effectively. And then a slightly odd one, which is, having heard about Exmouth and the IT computer systems that heat an entire civic swimming pool, where are our computers, and are they doing anything similar, or could they? Thank you.
So if I may just pick up the first point around GIS. At the moment, the focus obviously is very much in terms of making sure that the base data is correct, it's up to date, the activities that it's being used for in terms of being able to run the sort of ops services, etc., has obviously been a focus point. In terms of having a further layer, I think that's something we'd have to take away and see whether that's even actually technically possible in our system. but we'll take it away and have a look at it. But obviously the focus point at the moment clearly is making sure that it's operationally possible, that it's when you are going in having looked at it, at least you have got the right information. But certainly in terms of our frontline ops team, there's been some massive progress forward in terms of really assisting with the running of those services. Absolutely, in terms of if there's elements of the system that are meant to be resident focused, certainly in the same way as we are with the customer sort of journey, with the customer strategy, absolutely, we will seek to try and get them to test those for us. And then in terms of the last point, not something we have on the agenda at the moment, but we'll note the comment that you've made.
I may build a little bit on, like Susan, the answer to your question. We still do have our compute assets are here at the council premises at the moment. However, under the green agenda and climate actions, we are actively working of creating a business case and calculating numbers, whether it would be much more friendlier for the environment to actually move them into a cloud hosting model. That swimming pool scenario, I've seen the same article, which is quite fascinating, but I don't think we would ever have that amount of compute to heat the swimming pool. But it was a brilliant example in a way how technology actually can be used in very innovative and creative ways to add a huge amount of additional unexpected value.
Thank you for that. I thought at least you didn't manage to say that there's enough hot air generated here.
Councillor Duran.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think one of my questions has sort of been answered, and I'm not convinced the other one necessarily sits here in this agenda item. It's to do with website searching. So does it sit in here or not? Yeah. It's just that I tend to go through the customer way in to our. I don't use the internal route that we can have. So I'm coming that route, and I search for quite specific things. I search, for example, I'll say February 2022 cabinet agenda, and I get a massive load of stuff, and nowhere can I find the agenda or the webcast. You know, it's very difficult to. I've got used to it now, as I've been doing it as a parish councillor for years, but it can be quite frustrating, the number of seemingly irrelevant search results we get. And that can put a lot of people off bothering, quite frankly. I know it's the same with Google, it's the same with all manner of search engines, but I just find it quite frustrating when I'm very specific and I get no specific response. So it's just a gripe, really.
It's interesting actually, because the search returns 98.2 of the things run through it successfully, but that will be predominantly bin, fly tip, bulk, those sort of things. In terms of the councillor side of things, which the public may want to access, I think what I need to do is have a look at how modern.gov stores it and the metadata on that to inform the search on the main website, because it could be as simple as tightening something there would give a more defined response, because it's one of the things we're working through at the minute is we don't want to offer endless choices because that overwhelms the search. What are you looking for? So it's something I'll pick up and see if we can influence the search results.
Thank you.
Councillor Compton-Burnett.
Thank you. And thank you. It's great to hear all the new ideas. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this happening. One of the things that I think would be extremely useful, and I have mentioned it in the past and see whether it's technically possible, and it is a directory of community activities and services. BVA, Basingstoke Voluntary Action, has put something together which is sort of a compendium of all the services that its members provides. But it's not really at ward level, because what people in the wards often want is they've moved in there or often been there for many years. They've got a child. They want to know, where can I do swimming classes in Basingstoke? Is there a toddler group in my ward? And at the moment, there's absolutely no way of finding that information. And it shouldn't be that difficult because obviously BVA's got lots of members. All the councillors around here, we all know who are the main contacts that you could use. And in terms of updating, that could be worked out, you know, with BVA or another. But if you could possibly do that, it would be amazing. And the NHS would find it so helpful for when they discharge patients, and also when they've got people that are looking for weight loss services or, you know, diabetes clubs. Thank you.
I don't think that's a question for Lucy or Katie. I think that's actually something we need to pass back to the appropriate service area. So we'll certainly do that for you.
Councillor Mullally.
Thank you, Chair. So this question is in line with Councillor Testain's question. How do we stop reporting the same problem? Can we think about a digital solution? At least for councillors' point of view, for example, I reported a fly tipping issue in X Road. And if it has already been reported to come to the contact center by someone else, I can easily take it up saying, oh, by the way, it has been reported and this is what the progress is. Instead of right now, what I need to do is, without knowing, just need to send another email. It is an overhead and we can achieve efficiencies. You know, before logging an issue, I'll see whether that issue exists. Then I can update residents. In fact, we are taking some of the loads of officers so that they can effectively go and do the job instead of giving us updates.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's one of the areas which again throws us back in the discussion about the data. What do we report through the website, as an example, through the website or through the contact center, phone calls, or whatever is the medium? We have a mechanism of doing that, and that is simply that we have to become more advanced in how we match the data and how we then present those reports through, as example, our GIS and maps. There are some decisions that we'll have to make. What kind of an incident that we are going to expose, that what has been reported to us. I'm going to give an example from my past when I used to work in housing, that we did deliberately not want to expose certain type of an ASB cases because that gave then a bad twist on certain neighborhoods and estates. But things such as fly tips, yes, absolutely, it's not a technical issue that much, is probably part of our process development. We'll need to work at how we're going to achieve it. Technically, it's absolutely doable.
Questions? Oh.
Thank you. Mine's also on GIS. So I was sort of disappointed when the system went down because it's a tool that I must use every single day. And the new system, I know it's in its infancy, isn't as good, and I'm really struggling with it. And if I give you an example, it talked about street cleaning, and the lines on that, the visual lines on that are the same as other visual lines. So when you look at the map historically, when you layered it, you had the different colours, where the colours at the moment are the same. So I couldn't work out, is that, and it was showing me, is that vivid or is that the street cleaning line? And so I really need you to look at the visuality of that. But it is a tool that I use literally. There isn't a day I doesn't go by that I don't use it, really, I don't think. Is it possible, as has been said, I would really like to be able to have it on my phone, so when I'm out and walking the ward, I can actually identify exactly who owns that. Again, I'm taking photographs and then I'm having to take a photograph of a door number or something so I remember where I am, so that the photograph links to that. And the other thing, is the GIS system accessible to the pub, or how much of it is accessible to the public as well?
Thank you. So the first one, yes, it's absolutely possible to have GIS in a mobile format. Your comment about the layers, boundaries, the colors, the visuals, we'll have to look into that. I don't see there being an issue of addressing those. So I'll take that one away. Now, mobile use, we did touch on that one already, that yes, it can run on a mobile phone, it can run on a tablet, it can run on a computer, so that is really not a challenge either. GIS itself. Then can you repeat the last part of the question, please? Oh, sorry, the customers. That is again a decision. So at the moment where we are designing the system is that by default, as an example, our contact center and residents would be seeing the similar maps to make them work from one single view of the maps. What we can control is what layers we are going to expose to our residents. So we have a reasonably comprehensive control over the system. So it really depends on the requirement and what do we need to achieve and want to achieve in that space. But it's technically, again, it's highly configurable system.
So on that, so I think customers get, or the residents get really confused about ownership, you know. So I think I think the really important thing is that they have the layers. Is it whichever housing association? Is it a county function, or is it? Because otherwise, you know, when they ring through, and maybe they don't need to ring through. If they look at the map, they then can go to Vivid, because, and quite often a complaint that I get all the time is that they've rang and they're told it's not their issue, so they're going round the houses. And the other one is, if I can have it on my phone, can I come in and get it put on my phone? How can I do that? Thank you.
If I just pick those up then. So in terms of what the public sees, I think that's something we need to take away, and obviously that's a further discussion point, but I'm absolutely appreciating what you're saying. And it's also, we need to be really careful what people are using that information for. If it's simply to actually understand, you know, actually I need to phone Vivid or I need to phone Sovereign, that's something very different to someone using that as thinking that we as the council provided a legal position in terms of the ownership of the land. So we do need to take away that and think about and get some further advice on that. And in terms of the last point, again, we'll take away the kind of request for tools for members, and we'll come back to you on that, because it's not necessarily something we can offer at the moment. It's something we need to look into in terms of that type of provision, but it's noted that you would find that a useful tool.
And just exactly like Sue said, just to build on the first part of your question around the land ownership, we also have a dependence on the quality of the third-party data. So often if their data sets are not correct, there's nothing what we can do to fix that issue. And then this is not an unheard issue. It's actually fairly common that although we update the third-party data, but if that data is not accurate, then obviously the outcome is not ideal from us. But we can only work from the data, and we'll tell them if we find inaccuracies. But it's their data, their responsibility to maintain it.
Mine's on GIS updates, because I've happened to represent over a few years now different wards that have been around a long time. And the one thing that does come across is it's not quite up to date, either our information or the housing association. And do we have meetings with them? Do we get proper updates on GIS? Because I could go take you to certain places and I'll phone up Sovereign, for instance. Oh, it's not ours. And I'll phone our people. So I know it's Sovereign. And I know, because I've been around a long time, whose it is. If you know what I mean. Do we actually talk to Sovereign and the other Vivid and people like that? Because that's where a lot of the disputes have been, the way we sold off our housing stock years ago and part of the grounds with them. And it did get looked at a number of years ago, but I think it still needs looking at. And it wouldn't be down to you, but it might be as customer services. It's the other thing that I thought we had agreement with the Housing Association, this is to do with Buckskin and Southam a number of years ago, was if they phoned into them and it was ours, they would deal with the complaint by passing it over and vice versa. That seems to have fallen away. Do we still do that? And why can't we, if you see what I mean?
There wouldn't be a reason why we couldn't do it, but I'm not aware it is a practice that we have at the moment. As you say, it has drifted, if it ever, as it did exist.
And then again, on the first part, we were talking about that, yes, we do have a technical interface with the so we receive their data. There's an update process on that data again. But it goes back what we were just discussing. If that has not been maintained, then we end up on these kind of issues where it's inaccurate.
So I'll just quickly come back on that. So if you get a dispute, when they're not a major dispute, if, like for instance, you're to and fro, is that going to be picked up and looked at properly, and instead of it someone saying, which is done in the past, I can understand, oh, we'll deal with it today because it's easier, it's not a big deal, but we need a comprehensive, that is ours, that is theirs situation.
So again, we can take that away and have a look at what the current practice is and what the intended practice is going forward. So obviously noted from the beginning in terms of understanding what tools would be really useful for councillors in terms of normal ward and case business. How we will go away and look at how we're connecting with our partners, where we can share information, and how information can be pulled together to help with that themes, if you like, around data and what it's telling us. And obviously noting LG Inform and the One Network. Noting that we need to go away and review the targeted timeline update for GIS, but also once it is up and running to make sure that we're providing adequate training for those people that wish to use it. In terms of looking at a GIS member layer, we will certainly take that away and see what the art of the possible is, but obviously focusing currently on making sure the basics are right and working. We will certainly, wherever we can, look to use resident input in terms of accessing the systems, and obviously noting the point around using the sort of the cloud technology and how we're moving more towards a sustainable positioning on our computer systems. We'll note the point, whilst it's not something we can actually move forward, but we'll note the point around the website searching, and also linking to the request around forwarding of emails. In terms of the delivery request, a directory request, I'll pass that on to the relevant service and see what we can achieve. In terms of the technical reporting on GIS, understanding what will be actually on the system so that you can see what's already been reported and therefore you don't report it a second time. We will certainly look at the colours on the GIS system in terms of indicating a particular incident, whether it belongs to the council, whether it belongs to one of our registered providers. We will certainly look at mobile capability, also coming back round to the tools for councillors. We will give some consideration as to what layers of GIS should be made available for the public. And I think that's it. Oh, I haven't missed anything. Yeah, okay.
Thank the officers for coming. Very informative. Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a good evening.
Item 7, review the tracker of the committee recommendations to decision makers. This is item 7, page 47 to 48. Have we got any questions on this or anything? I think it's fairly straightforward. What's been happening? I've had a look earlier. It's only it's only one page, so are we happy with this? Yeah, agree. Item, what's it called? 8, I think it was. Which is review of the works programme, which is pages 49 to 50. So we the IT, which we're doing today on the 21st, and the customer experience. We also have, I assume you've got this paper on the housing. I think Councillor James was on the task and finish group. So I don't know if you want to talk to this, to the councillors, just to give them a brief outline and see if we're in agreement with it. When you're sorry, I've denied that power.
Oh, it's me.
Oh,
Sorry, thanks so much. Yes, I mean, it was a really successful task and finish group, the first meeting and the scoping meeting. We had a few absentees, but all political parties were represented. Within the document, it just shows you what the purpose of the review is. And then going forward, then the key questions as to what we want to achieve from that. What we decided, we had a sort of discussion, but looking back at the paper that came to scrutiny on the actual the paper that we were looking at on choice based on lettings, we decided to look at households because we became, there was so much to cover over the night. I mean, we all were talking about different issues and it became quite confused, and what we then drew it down back to is households. So what we were going to look at first of all is within this paper is families, and then the proposal is that we also look at young people, and then in relation to couples, and then the other one is older persons. But it doesn't have to stay there, because then we need to look at disability and care leavers. So as a piece of work, we propose to come back to you within the 6 months in relation to this piece of work, but then we would carry on and it would be a rolling programme looking at those other household groups. We may, as part of the household groups, when we're looking at the purpose of the review, that may change slightly, and so will the questions. But what we're looking at here tonight is about families.
I don't know if we got any questions, but I think it's quite tells its own story. But it is about housing allocation, not the wider thing. This is what we're here for. I'm quite happy with it to go forward. Oh, sorry.
Could I request, so picking up your point in terms of there are other demographic groups that you wish to look at, if this could be classed as a task and finish group in its entirety for this particular demographic, you would then bring a new task and finish request for the other items. Otherwise, your task and finish group will go on for a very long time, and therefore you're trying to get some resolution for this particular element of it, and then you would pick your next one.
I think it says that in relation to this. They're saying that this piece of work will take 6 months, and the aim is in relation to the questions and the focus. But what it's saying is that then moving on in the future work programme, we will examine other household groups, and it says, for example, but that's not saying as part of this piece of work. It's just giving examples of what needs to be looked at as part of the lettings policy.
Thank you, Chair. When we talked about it, one of the things which I think it might be worth talking about, because we did agree that we would do householder types. Now I had a concern because the largest proportion on the housing allocation register are single people. I think, Laura, you just mentioned young. I think you meant single rather than, it's okay, because obviously sometimes there are older people who are single as well. So I don't know what we think about that, because I know obviously it's difficult, isn't it, to decide on a group. I mean, Abigail, you were there as well. I don't know if you've got any thought on that one.
No, I think my understanding was that the initial programme of work was looking at families, and then we would look at other groups. But that we were thinking that we could keep as being the same task and finish group and just sort of work our way through household by household.
I think the principle behind it's fine, but next year is another election, another thing. Someone else will be in the chair, different people maybe around this table. I think where you're coming from, I haven't got a problem with. I think it's right. We're going down that line. So it's such a big subject when you actually break it down. I think where you're starting from is a good place. I'm quite happy with it. I don't know what the rest of the committee is. And once you've done that piece of work, if we're all sitting around here, the same people, we can move it on. But it's going to be who's ever sitting in the scrutiny, not the chair, but the committee next year after the election. But I think the principle where we're going is the right principle. So are we happy with this to go forward? Yep. Yeah, good. As for other items, this will be next year. Most of them, none of them will be coming this year. The transport one, we did have an open session with Hampshire County Council about 3 weeks ago with the buses. You know, it was a good talk, but I think it's something perhaps next year, if I'm on this committee, not necessarily chairing, but it's something perhaps we can look at, but we won't take it off the works programme. It's there, and it's been the same as Serco, what's happening there. They're things that can come back, and as I say, it's going to be down to the committee. So I think that's as far as we go. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else left on this. I've lost. Is there any more?
There's no.
Right. Where are we? Public participation. I'll get there in a minute. Sorry. Reviews. Well, we've got no private matters, so no exclusions. So this is the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, Ashley. It's been a very good meeting again. I've quite enjoyed. I've got to say, well, we've got another meeting yet before we all clear off, but I must admit, I will say, as chairing the meeting, I've enjoyed this committee very much. Thank you.